On the original Star Trek, like the original 1960s TV show with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, the budget was not that high, and for special effects they were relatively limited. Quite often, new alien life forms would just be basically human beings with either pointy ears or blue makeup on their faces or knobs or ridges on their forehead, and only rarely, every so often, would they encounter on the Enterprise some new alien species so different, so bizarre, that a character like Mr. Spock or the Dr. Bones McCoy would say it's life, but not as we know it. Something so completely different, it blew apart their categories. You know, it's funny, the Bible actually gives us a similar set of characteristics for angelic beings. There are times in the Bible where angels, messengers from God, show up and aren't distinguishable from any other human being, and then there are times when they are really, really weird. That's where we're headed this week on things seen and unseen in our study of angels. So, like I say, there are times in the Bible where messengers from God or angelic beings show up and they are so completely other from what anybody expects that it sort of blows the mind of the person who's seen them in a vision or heard about them or experienced their presence. Interestingly enough, most of the time when people in, modern day Western places think about angels, they tend to picture something like this, a human being with wings on the side. So our sort of standard understanding, our standard picture of what angels look like, maybe even the angel tree topper you put on your Christmas tree back this past December, looks like regular human being with wings on their back. And oddly, there are no mentions of angels that look like that in the Bible. There are times when angels or angelic messengers show up and are basically indistinguishable from human beings. They just show up like a person dressed in regular clothes or maybe in a white robe. And then there are times when angels look really, really, really bizarre with 6 wings or 4 faces, or sometimes full of eyes and full of wings and wheels within wheels within wheels. In other words, there are times when God's angelic beings, when those beings that are in the very presence of God don't look like us at all, and people's first reaction when they encounter these angelic voices or presences is shock and fear. We're going to take a look at some of those stories this week in our ongoing study that we've been doing on Thursdays at 1 o'clock here at Community of Christ. This week, weird angels. If last week was an eye-opener when we took a look at bad angels or fallen angels or stories about those divine or semi-divine or supernatural beings that were used or worked toward evil or adversarial purposes, if that was weird enough, get ready for seraphs and seraphim or cherubs that look more like the ancient Egyptian Sphinx than fat babies with wings and arrows like on Cupid-style Valentines that we often picture. In fact, we're going to discover that a lot of the mental pictures we have about what angels or angelic beings are like comes a lot more from Renaissance art than from actually the biblical texts, where the seraphim have 6 wings that demonstrate both their otherness and the holiness of God, that they fly with 2 wings, but with 2 wings they cover their faces because God's presence is so holy, and they cover themselves because they are undone in the presence of God. Or fiery beings, or beings that guard the Ark of the Covenant, or other really, really bizarre, unnamed, unclassified kind of angels that are full of eyes to suggest they see all and know all. Those are weird kinds of stories, and we need to explore what are they all about, and what does it do to our sense of our place in the universe if we discover that God hasn't only made beings that look like you and me, and maybe there are angels that look like us, human beings with wings on them, but what does it mean that there might be beings intelligent and created by God that are completely different from anything we can understand or imagine? Maybe we'll discover both the humility that we aren't the only game in town, but also a sense of deep humility and maybe even how privileged we are that we are invited into relationship with God when God clearly has a much wider variety of beings and created messengers at God's disposal. So if you've ever wanted to know about those sort of strange beings that show up in the corners of stories in the Bible and wondered, what are we talking about here? Join us for this conversation, for this, the 5th in our 6-part series, Things Seen and Unseen. We hope you'll join us this Thursday at 1 o'clock or catch up with these video summaries. See you along the way.